Hey folks, it's Matt once again, and welcome back to another review for the John Candy Marathon. And this time it is the 1991 film Nothing But Trouble, starring Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, Demi Moore, Taylor Negron, who is no longer with us. He was a bad guy in The Last Boy Scout, among other films. The only film directed by Dan Aykroyd. He worked on the screenplay. Dan Aykroyd plays two roles, as well as John Candy playing two roles. This film was a huge flop when it came out. It cost around 40 million and it made like 8 million. Roger Ebert hated this so much that apparently he actually refused to write a review for it. And like in the theater there were kids talking, he was telling them to talk louder so he didn't hear the movie. Chevy Chase apparently made fun of this film on his talk show. Remember that talk show that lasted, what, like 1 week? It was longer than that, but it was pretty ironic. He's making fun of this movie on the talk show that became a huge flop as well. And this gets a 4.9 on IMDb. I'm sorry, I call bullshit on that. I never. I saw this film when I was a kid many times on VHS, and I've always enjoyed it ever since I was a kid. I never understood the hate for it. I never understood what the big problem with it. I thought it was a film that as a kid was kind of creepy, it's weird, it's offbeat, it's almost like a spiritual sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 in a way. It's fun, it's entertaining, and in a way it's an original. I mean, I said it's a spiritual sequel to Chainsaw Massacre 2 if Dan Aykroyd played the cook, but without Leatherface and his PG-13. I say that, but this is definitely an original film when you look at it. There's not many films like this, which most people would say that's a good thing. But maybe it's how people view David Lynch movies, and I'm not the biggest fan of David Lynch. I view this film in the fact that people don't get pissed that I compared the two, but it's a weird film and it's so offbeat that it makes me smile. And is it the funniest film ever? No. There are funnier Chevy Chase films, National Lampoon's Vacation and Christmas Vacation. There are funnier John Candy films, Summer Rental, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, to name a few. But I would say it's the most underrated. I was going to put Summer Rental, but I would say Summer Rental as John Candy starring in the film, it's the most underrated. But for a film John Candy's in, this is one of his most hated, and I disagree wholeheartedly. I think a 4.9 and the big flop, Dan Aykroyd never getting a chance to direct, I think that's all. I mean, it's if you don't like it, that's fine. I totally disagree. Never understood it. I mean, this is a film where Chevy Chase, Demi Moore, and two other people, they accidentally go through a stop sign. They get arrested by John Candy, who works for this town called Vulcanvania, headed by this judge. And if I wouldn't have recognized Dan Aykroyd if I didn't know it was him. It's I think one of his more underrated performances because he's not Dan Aykroyd being Dan Aykroyd. He's playing a very different kind of character. The makeup I think is well done, and one of his more underrated roles. And if you don't like Dan Aykroyd, he's the villain in this. If you do like Dan Aykroyd, it's a chance to see him play a very different character. It's almost as if he did see Texas Chainsaw Massacre and went, I want to play the cook in that. He reminds me a little bit of that. And the setting itself, where it's this mansion that in the middle of this landfill with all these broken down cars, and there's like a mountain full of toasters. There's these big fixtures. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the ending of Chainsaw Massacre 2. But like imagine like a big landfill and there's smoke coming out of the ground because apparently coal mines and such underneath. It's such a landfill, and inside the place there's a lot of good art decoration. I really like the look of this film. And the DP is actually Dean Cundy, who worked with John Carpenter a lot. So it's, I think, a well shot film. I think it's a good looking film. I like the cast in the film. But before I get into that, I was talking about the art direction. For example, there's a scene where Demi Moore and Chevy Chase come across this room filled to the brim with IDs, with driver licenses of all sorts of people and newspapers dating back to the 1800s. And there's even like Jimmy Hoffa and Jimmy Hoffa's driver's license. And there's all these like hidden passageways and hidden slides and just a lot of weird stuff. And I like that in movies. I enjoy that in movies. Whether it be the Goonies or whether it be any others. Those old films from back in the day where you had the hidden passages and the people under the stairs. And before people asked, yeah, I would put film like People Under the Stairs above this. Yes, I would. But for a film that's been hated so much, I don't think it deserves it. Again, is it the funniest film ever? No. Do all the jokes work? No. But it's not that fucking bad. Now people could say, well, is it that fucking good? I think it's a fun, entertaining, offbeat movie. I mean, you got a weird judge that if you look closely, his nose might be a dick, who loves the warm Hawaiian punch and hot dogs that look like gray bratwursts of, what is that, rhino's dick? No, not really, but. So yeah, a weird judge with a nose that looks like a penis. You got a roller coaster death where if the judge really doesn't like you, you go on this belt and you get taken to Mr. Bone Stripper, this roller coaster that leads to this place where you get killed and stripped to the bones, and then your bones get shot out by this little chute. You have two mutants in diapers, and you have piles of bones everywhere. You got one time they find a room where it's a bunch of bats and a lot of shit. And it's the bat room. You have another room that's just up and down with broken dolls and toys. You have John Candy in two roles. One as a cop who is not as evil as the rest. Another as the, so I guess, sort of sister. Whereas John Candy in drag, which honestly is not as bad as it sounds because I thought John Candy played it well. He's playing that character as his mute, so it doesn't have to have this stupid, oh, look at me, I'm a girl, fake feminine voice. And just the reactions that he and Chevy Chase give each other makes me chuckle. I know I'm going all over the place, but this is such a original film. It's a weird, crazy flick. I just see how someone back in the day as a kid would be creeped out by this. I was a little bit creeped out by it, by some of the stuff. As I watch it, I'm like, I don't understand how it's not a cult film. I don't understand that at all. At least Chainsaw Massacre 2 and these other films get some kind of credit because they did special edition Blu-rays. You'll never see that for this because no one in the film will talk about it. Taylor Negron, he's unfortunately passed away. John Candy's passed away. Chevy Chase hates the film. Demi Moore, you think she's going to talk about this? No. Dan Aykroyd, he's probably felt the burn. I think even Chevy Chase said this pretty much killed Dan Aykroyd's career because it was such a big flop, and because he was the writer, director, and one of the stars, he took the big blame for it. If I get into the film, Chevy Chase is his financial publisher, and he's a nice guy. He's not an asshole. He's not a dick. He's a nice guy. He treats his chauffeur well. His chauffeur tells him about, hey, thanks for doing this for me and my wife. And he's not. Chevy Chase has a little bit of that wisecracking, but he's sort of a hero. He's almost becomes an action hero at the end. And I would say this was more effective than Memoirs of an Invisible Man. And that was a John Carpenter film. And that would have been cool if this was directed by John Carpenter. But I thought, sadly, in the 90s, Dan Aykroyd directed a better film than John Carpenter with Memoirs of Invisible Man. That I thought used Chevy Chase in a straightforward, almost thriller with a little bit of humor. I thought this was done better than that. But yeah, he's a financial publisher. He meets this lawyer played by Demi Moore. And he still got a bit of that Chevy Chase wit. And other than Hot Type Time Machine, this is the best thing Chevy Chase has done in, what, 20, 25 years? I mean, what else? I don't care about his work on TV shows. They did nothing for me. And again, he's got a little bit of that wit of where meets Demi Moore at the elevator. She sees something, gives him some stuff, leaves, and he's like, "Hey, thanks for the espresso maker and the bag of shit." But he's a nice guy, and she comes up to him, and she needs to get to Atlantic City, and he's like, "Okay, I'll give you a ride." And hey, don't know, it's my car. I'll drive, give you a ride. And then these two other people, they're Brazilian, and they're millionaires, and they work with Chevy Chase. They decide to join. It's Taylor Negron. He's the bad guy in The Last Boy Scout who tells Bruce Willis, I want to make you scream. And Bruce Willis says, play rap music. I think the woman's name is Bertilla Damas. Might have gotten her name wrong. And they're all right in the film. They appear sporadically. But the four of them are on the journey. And like Chevy Chase, he's tired. Oh, he's not going to go on the trip. And then he sees Demi Moore, who's very beautiful looking. And he's like, okay, I'm up. Give me the keys and give me the... And the four of them go on. You can tell some improv from Chevy Chase. Like when Demi Moore brings up his divorce from 4 years ago. He's like, nah, yeah, I gotten over it. I've been over it for weeks. And Volcavania, all these weird smoke coming out of the ground, all these weird rednecks. And he turns to the two people. And one of the lines I always remember, and he turns and he sees these two people. It's like, oh, it's Evil Knievel and Mr. Clean. that gets a chuckle out of me every single time I see this. He's Evil Knievel, Mr. Clean. I don't know why. I thought it was a pretty funny improv. And they accidentally ran a stop sign. And Chevy Chase, he doesn't want to do this at first. He gets pressured by these two almost pretty much assholes, Brazilianaires, to, hey, come on, this is a cop with a piece of shit car. You could go faster. Look at all the shit you got in this car. He gets pressured by these two guys. First pressure to take a detour to be there in the first place, then to try to outrun the cop. But he gets stopped, and it's John Candy. And he searches him, and you get a little bit of stuff where John Candy, well, I should say, Chevy Chase goes, oh, hey, lower back, please. Okay, that's nice. Why don't you check the prostates too? Huh? Okay, I got a lower itch there. And John Candy's like, no, that's okay. And it was cool to see John Candy and Chevy Chase together. I mean, that might not seem much to people, but it was the only time we could see Chevy Chase and John Candy have some back and forth with each other. And I thought that's cool. Well, that's not true. National Lampoon's Vacation. I always forget that. I always forget that because it appears at the end of the film. But at least they have more screen time here. Whether as John Candy playing this character or the other character, this right there. Which I'll get more into that. But at least that's supposed to be creepy. That's supposed to be a what the fuck. You tell from Chevy Chase's reaction, his expressions. It's supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to be, oh yeah, she's... No, it's supposed to be like, what the fuck? And they get taken to the courthouse, and all these metal sculptures, this old music being piped in, big salvage. He sees like these sculptures of dolphins. He's like, oh, so that's where they buried Flipper. And Demi Moore sees a sign. He says, oh, look, no cussing. And then Chevy Chase goes, well, shit. You have like a shitload of toasters. Just a weird, huge landfill. Broken cars and all that stuff. It's really, I thought, a cool setting. And that's what this is. It's a horror comedy. That's what this is. It's a horror comedy. And with that kind of cast, that's part of the fun of it for me. And definitely better than a lot of horror comedies lately. But yeah, they have Dan Aykroyd as the judge. And again, I would say it's one of my favorite Dan Aykroyd performances. Not the best. I would put Ghostbusters Ray up there, but Dan Aykroyd really goes gusto on the role. And I thought he made for a good villain. He's a villain you hated, which was the point. And just the makeup and like Chevy Chase tried to light a cigar and the dad was, put out that darn racket. Racket. Just Demi tastes the fucking cigar, just stomps the shit out of it. Chevy Chase has to argue, wait a minute, later, I just, went by a stop sign. I didn't even know it was there. And that's where the start of the trap door. You have Daniel Baldwin. I forgot he was in this movie. Him and this group are speeding, and John Candy catches them. But Daniel Baldwin is playing a creep and tries to kill John Candy. And John Candy like pretends and pleads, and he pulls out like this fucking machine gun. It almost looks like the gun. It's not exactly the gun, but it's like one of those submachine guns you would see in Die Hard or something. He pulls that out, and they get put in the court, and they're all laughing at the judge and not giving a shit. And they get introduced to the roller coaster of death called Mr. Bone Stripper, where they get stripped of their bones and put into this huge pile of bones at the end of it. I'm like, and I think even the song, I think it's from the band Damn Yankees, Bone Stripper. Holy shit! It was really unique. I really enjoyed that. I'll tell you one thing. This is a better Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie than Texas Chainsaw 3D and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4. That'll be a. You want to talk about a shitty movie that reminds you of Chainsaw? Texas Chainsaw 3D is shitty. This is a much better movie than something like that. Or that fucking leather prequel, whatever the fuck they're doing, that sounds like a ripoff of the Devil's Rejects, or whatever the fuck they're doing now. But yeah, Chevy Chase, Demi Moore, and the two rich folks, they have this dinner, and there's like a toy train, and he's got like Hawaiian Punch. They puts like one of those, almost a nozzle that you would put in a can of oil for your car, just puts it in there. How about a warm glass of Hawaiian Punch? And this weird thing called ants on a log. And that's where Chevy Chase notices that the Dan Aykroyd's nose looks like a penis. Like a dick nose. And just this weird hot dogs and like Chevy Chase and Demi Moore's expression. It's just like, I know how you feel. I feel in the same way. Just a disgust. Like, what the fuck? And the two rich folks try to escape, and they get a good bunch, and they get far, and John Candy comes upon them. But John Candy, as this character, he's not an evil guy. He's actually a good guy, and he's going to help them out, and they're going to give him some money. And then you see him like two more times, and then at the end, he's with the rich folks, and even the woman was the sister of Taylor Negron, and he falls in love with her, and he's like in the good life, and it's like, hey, he did a good deed, and he's now living the good life. Good for him. But in that scene, you also introduced to the other John Candy role, the like granddaughter or whatever of, because Dan Aykroyd's character is supposed to be over 100 years old. And usually this kind of thing I'm not the biggest fan of. Oh, a guy dressed in drag, really, for comedy. But I thought John Candy, the fact that it was a mute, the fact that just the responses Chevy Chase gave to John Candy and their sort of expressions between each other just made me laugh. I couldn't help it. It did make me chuckle. And just how earnest John Candy's performance as that character, just this mute but built like a brick shit house, ready to manhandle Chevy Chase. It did make me laugh. It did make me smile. And just all of Chevy Chase's looks, I thought, played off very well. Indeed, a little bit more of the story that Dan Aykroyd's character, long ago, his grandfather was fucked over by bankers, and they were given and left with this shitty place with a bunch of coal mines, and just how they got screwed over. And that's why he goes, that's why I never let a banker go. And while the two rich folks get away, Chevy Chase and Demi Moore are trapped there. And you just get a lot of cool stuff in the house, like the bed they're on starts flipping. There's hidden doors. There's rooms that they find again, like a bat with a bunch of guano. I guess that's the bat room. Another room filled with all these dolls, head to toe. The whole fucking wall moving in on them, trying to crush them, and they gotta get through this other door. They get through a place and this trap of a safe trying to squish them to get out of the way, and that's where they find this room full of IDs and licenses and newspaper clippings from the 1800s, as well as corpses. Bag of bones for a couple bodies. And then you know what happened to Jimmy Hoffa now. And that kind of stuff appeals to me. I really enjoy that. I like that. You know, where the hidden rooms and hidden doors, and that's why, for example, I watched playthroughs of the new Resident Evil 7. I don't have the game. I don't have the systems to play the game. And this computer can barely go on the internet, let alone play a game, because it's from 2010, this laptop, and I can't afford to get a new one. But what I was saying, Resident Evil 7, it's this house where there's hidden passages and all this crazy stuff and all these rooms, which brought me back to playing the original Resident Evil and playing those games. And it's that sort of what's around the next corner aspect that I find fun. It's I guess that haunted house, fun house mentality of it. And it even leads to a point where they find and they go through these slides and they get split up, and Chevy Chase falls into this pile of bones and sees Dan Aykroyd take the nose off and it's just bone, and he even takes his own leg off, while David Moore gets outside, gets caught by these two pinheads, like two. They look like something that should be in the 30s film, 40s film Freaks. Like one of us. Where they're wearing diapers and really good makeup. One of them is played by Dan Aykroyd, and I forget who plays the other. And as a kid, they kind of annoy me, but watch it now, they actually got some chuckles out of me too. Because people just say they're overdoing it, but I didn't really find it that way. They were kind of, they're not mean or rude, they're just dumb. And I've seen that in a lot of movies played over the top and more annoying than this. Even to the point where, like, Debbie Moore's about ready to be thrown into this pit of fire by John Candy, and these two guys are like, no, no, we want to play with her. And one goes, hi, we're not allowed in the house. I don't know why, but when he said that, it made me laugh. and Demi Moore faints. And then when she's locked up, she's playing cards with them and cheating because if one wins, all he wants is cereal. When the other one wins, he wants Diane. And she's like, "Ah, no, you don't. Come on, let's play some more." And you have Digital Underground, which is a band from back in the day, and one of the people in the is Tupac Shakur. So you do see Tupac in this movie. He's not one of the main singers; he's sort of part of the group. But they sing this song that has been stuck in my head. Well, I mean, not literally, but I've always remembered ever since I saw this as a kid. And did see this as a kid, probably 2 or so years after it came out in '91 on VHS. Because even the cover of the VHS, I'm like, wow, what's this? Being a kid who watched a lot of horror films from Stephen King's Graveyard to Shift to Maximum Overdrive, I'm like, this is like a horror movie. And in a way it is. But I'm like, well, I know that guy, and I know John Candy from Summer Rental, and this song, like, all around the world, same song. Ooh, all around the world, same song. I always remember that song ever since I was a kid. And even in real life, I would, for some reason, not sing the whole song, but say those words. And I do like that the one of the lead guys, there's this other female police officer who's working with Dan Aykroyd, and the guy just, he's like, man, that's one ugly cross burning redneck peckerwood police bitch, man. And she hears him. I did it. I forgot about that insult, but I thought that was pretty funny. Chevy Chase gets in a fight with Dan Aykroyd, and Chevy Chase has like a bone, and Dan Aykroyd has a sword. And he throws like this dead skunk and throws at him. You know, what the hell did he say? Like, you take this, you stinking relic. And just, oh, my skunk. I don't know, it's just sometimes weird stuff just makes you chuckle or laugh. So this got a few chuckles out of me, and I just like the design of the house, the design of the area, just this weird vibe of uniqueness. I think especially you watch nowadays so many movies that in one ear out the other and remind you and rip this off, rip that off. Then you go back, you're like, this is a film that, yeah, a little bit influenced by Chainsaw Massacre and such, but is fairly unique. And I think at least that alone, well, just because the film's unique doesn't automatically make it good, but I think this is a good movie that is also a bit unique. And I think that gives a bit more points to it. At least more than a 4.9. Come on. You can't tell me this is a 4.9 out of 10 bad. I would ask why. Why is it that bad? Oh, John Candy's in drag. Is he talking like in a feminine voice? Is he showing his ass and tits? No. He's being a dominating force. He's having some fun, giving Chevy Chase some fun reactions out of him. That's pretty much it. And it goes into the plot where Dan Aykroyd's like, fine, I won't kill you, but you have to marry her. It's like, what? Come on, all I did was run through a goddamn stop sign. I just want to get to Atlantic City. And then when he's forced to be married, and it says, you do? And Chevy Chase says, but what? I bet, I can't, what? Oh, fine, I do. And then ultimately Chevy like, wait, I can't do this. He gets put to the bone stripper, but he's able to break the machine and escape with his life. And by the end, he's sort of become almost a little bit of an action hero, where Demi Moore is about ready to be cut with all these blades coming down and chop her to bits. She warns Chevy, so she's not just a greedy bitch. And Chevy Chase is able to get this barrel of fuel and light it up and blow stuff up and rescue Demi Moore. And She's like, "You saved my life," and he's like, "Thanks, it was worth it." And they're able to escape. They get to some cops. They bring them back. They realize they got fucked over because the cops are really with Dan Aykroyd, and that's when their place that was unsettled with all these burning coal mines. Everything goes up shit creek. Everything's blowing up, falling apart, and Dan Aykroyd, you think maybe they're dead, but you have Chevy Chase who's having this nightmare, and he has this funny thing, but no, no, funny reactions to this nightmare he's having. He wakes up, looks on the news, and Dan Aykroyd's still alive. It's like, yeah, no, we lost everything, but I want to see my son. He's in New York. See you soon, banker. And then it cuts to Chevy Chase. No, runs out. There's a Looney Tunes cutout of like through the wall, and he's like, "No, you won't." And it's making me laugh just thinking about it. Just that sort of quick before the end credits, it was like, "You'll see you soon, Baker." Dude. No, you won't. I don't know, just and then the Digital Underground song plays, and you have it's one of those credits, which I like these kind of credits where you see the person's face and then the name underneath. I didn't do all the jokes work? No. Is it a laugh a riot? No. I would like to see more of this John Candy, this character. Some of the jokes could have been tweaked a bit to make it a funnier movie. But I still got quite a few chuckles out of it. I love the design, the architecture, the environment of inside the house with all these traps and weird rooms and what's going to happen next, to the outside with the landfills and all the beaten down cars. I love the horror comedy aspect, and it just made for an offbeat, weird, strange, and somewhat original experience viewing the film. I think the cast do a good job. I like Demi Moore. I've always liked Demi Moore. I really love G.I. Jane. I like her in. God, why can't I think of movies she's been in? Fuck. I think. Oh, what was it? Mr. Brooks? Was she in Mr. Brooks? I think because it's been forever since I've seen Demi Moore in something. I'm like, I'm forgetting. I think she was in Striptease. She wasn't that bad in Striptease. I mean, the movie has its problems, but she wasn't like awful in the movie. I've always liked Demi Moore as an actress. John Candy, he's fun in the film. I thought Dan Aykroyd, this is one of his better performances because he really loses himself in the role and he becomes not Dan Aykroyd, but becomes this judge that you want to hate. And I thought Chevy Chase did a good job. This is the last good film he starred in. And aside from Hot Tub Time Machine, it's the last good film he's been in since 1991. It's not that new Vacation movie. That's a piece of shit. It's not Funny Money, or I don't care about the TV work he's done. Community didn't impress me. I'm sorry. Didn't. I'm not even sure if that's the name of the show. That's how little I give a fuck. But I do give a fuck about this movie. To the point now it's 35 minutes in. But I mean, most people who review this film are going to trash it. Okay, that's their opinion. 4.9 out of 10. Roger Ebert hated to death. All the critics. I mean, you know it's bad when they release a DVD and there's not one critic review that's a positive. There's no critic reviews. Usually they do that for a movie. They don't. There's not a single one. Just the DVD itself had to give a. The DVD itself had to say it's funny because no one else would. But I enjoy this film. I enjoyed it since I was a kid. I enjoy it today. I never understood what the hate for it was for. I still don't get it. I don't get what's so bad about it. I really don't. I think it's a fun, dark humor mixed with a bit of horror. And with this kind of cast, that makes the movie more interesting. And dare I say, kind of an original. Which is something you definitely don't see nowadays. But That's my thoughts on Nothing But Trouble, to me an underrated flick from 1991. And we'll see you soon, banker! No, you won't.